What's up, YouTube Revolution? ZombfectedGaming 349 at your fingertips. So today I am going to be reviewing The Last of Us TV series, Season 1, Episode 1, called When You're Lost in the Darkness. So this series begins in the year 1968 during a talk show talking about pandemics and viruses and how humanity has dealt with them and how we always find ways to cure them, and since humanity always finds ways to bounce back. But when the topic of fungus gets brought up, things get a lot scarier. This scientist talks about how penicillin is made by fungus and even the drug LSD. But also the topic about the cordyceps fungus gets brought up and how it infects bugs and can even take over their mind, just like in the real world. This scientist says that viruses can kill people, but what if this fungus were to evolve after the planet gets warmer and eventually jumps to humans? And since fungus has no cure, unlike viruses, what will happen to humanity? The scientist then says that we lose, and the audience listening to this talk show conversation just looked really creeped out. After that, the opening credits starts, and the best part is, it's the same soundtrack as the video game, so great job on that, HBO. The iconic doo 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 doo. Alright, but anyways, the opening credits has this Game of Thrones style intro, but has all this fungus growing everywhere, which is just an amazing way to make a brand new iconic opening. But now let's fast forward to the year 2003. Enter the pre-apocalyptic stage. Enter the Miller's family. We meet Joel Miller and Sarah Miller and Tommy Miller on a very nice day on Joel's birthday, just like how the video game starts, but we get some extra stuff to see here in the show, early on in that day, whereas in the game it all started during the night. We see Sarah making breakfast for her dad, Joel, and we also get to see Tommy walk in, and even though these characters aren't 100% looking like the game's characters, their voices definitely sound a lot like the game's characters, which is definitely something 100% right, and I love it. One for sure that I can definitely say that very much stands out for sure is Tommy. Tommy sounds a lot like Tommy, and I love it. Great job on the acting so far from great Gabriel Luna, which is playing as Tommy. He sounds exactly like Jeffrey Pierce's Tommy. Amazing job, Gabriel Luna. And we also get to see Sarah go to school during this pre-apocalypse, and after school she goes to the clock store to get her dad's watch fixed as a birthday present, leading up to the moment just like in the game, giving her dad the watch for his birthday. But eventually after the clock store, Sarah goes to her neighbor's house known as the Adlers, which is different from the game since in the game their neighbor's name was Jimmy. So while Sarah is at the neighbor's, she does homework over there for a while, waiting for raisin cookies to be made, and Sarah looks for her dad's favorite movie, Curtis and Viper 2, which is an Easter egg to The Last of Us Part 2, a movie Ellie and Joel were gonna end up watching. But just as Sarah is looking for the movie, the grandma in the background, in the wheelchair, is twitching and opening her mouth in a very creepy way, indicating that she is infected with the parasitic fungus. Eventually, Sarah goes home a bit suspicious of what's been going on lately, and so she locks the door, and her dad is like, "Oh, you locked the door for once." And we finally make it to the night part where the game began. At the moment, Sarah gives her dad the watch, and Joel says to his daughter, "Where did you get the money for this?" Sarah says, just like in the game, "Drugs, I sell hardcore drugs." And then after, Sarah shows her dad the movie Curtis and Viper 2, and Joel gets all excited and says, "Pop it in." Joel then tells Sarah, "Don't fall asleep." Unlike in the game, Joel tells Sarah to go to bed by saying, "What are you still doing up?" These are definitely a nice remix to the film adaptation while staying true to the source material, and it continues to remix stuff while staying true to the source materials, kind of like how the Walking Dead TV series does it, adapting events from the comics. Alright, but meanwhile, Joel is watching Curtis and Viper 2, and Sarah falls asleep, and Joel gets a phone call from Tommy saying he went to jail because he was sticking up for some waitress when he knocks out a guy. This is definitely different since in the game it was Tommy calling Sarah. Joel then puts Sarah to bed, and he is on his way to bail Tommy out of jail, but we don't see that happen. Sarah eventually wakes up to the sound of helicopters flying over and finds the neighbor's dog at the door, and she tries to bring the dog back, but doesn't want to go back since the dog can tell the grandma turned. But Sarah goes into the Adler house and almost slips on blood on the floor, and she looks over and notices the grandma Adler is eating one of the other Adlers, and this moment was very similar to the first zombie encounter in the first Resident Evil game. Also, this whole pre-apocalypse part is very much giving me Fear the Walking Dead Season 1 vibes, since that's how Fear the Walking Dead started in the pre-apocalypse phase in Season 1. But then after, the grandma starts chasing Sarah out of the house, and Joel and Tommy show up just in time to kill the grandma neighbor, and Sarah looks horrified. And so when they get into Tommy's truck, this part is very faithful to the video game. We eventually get to take a look at Lewis. Tommy this time says Jimmy's farm. Place instead. I gotta say, I think that wasn't a bad swapping out Lewis for Jimmy, because Jimmy was originally the neighbor in the video game, and Jimmy was the neighbor that Joel shot in the video game, and these remixes into the TV adaptation is just so genius. While Tommy is driving, there's tons of planes flying low, and as they are driving through Austin, Texas, while all hell is breaking loose, a car almost crashes into them, but doesn't crash. Another remix, unlike in the game, the car actually crashes into them in the game. But eventually, it's one of those planes that crashes into the street, and that's how the crash happens this time in this remix. Just like in the video game, Sarah's leg is injured, and Joel and Sarah are separated from Tommy and gotta run away from infected, and a soldier saves them. Joel then says to the soldier, "We are not sick," and the soldier radios to command, and just like in the game, command orders the soldier to shoot them because they suspected that Sarah was bitten on the leg. The soldier then shoots at them, and Tommy shows up to kill the soldier, and the whole saddest scene in gaming plays out, but stings even more with tears going down your face. The scene is so well acted, and we get a more emotional response from a teary-eyed Tommy by saying Joel in a very sad way, as Sarah dies in Joel's arms. Already, this moment has sold it for sure. The acting is so good. I'm already giving this episode a 10 out of 10. Now we jump to 20 years later, just like in the video game, but the year is 2023, just like in our real life's current day. But it doesn't jump to the part where Joel wakes up. It starts with this kid walking towards the Boston QZ, and the Fedra soldiers pick him up and check to see if he's infected. And the kid ends up being infected, and they put him down. We eventually see a bunch of people working and burning dead infected bodies, and we are reintroduced to Joel in this time skip of him burning these dead bodies. We actually see Joel burning the one infected kid's dead body. One really interesting part is we also get to see Joel as a smuggler smuggling drugs and doing a drug deal with a Fedra soldier. We also get to see Tess for the first time in the show, and she is getting interrogated by Robert and his guys, and eventually a Firefly attack happens with the explosion outside. Tess goes outside, and we see a shootout between a Firefly sniper and a bunch of Fedra soldiers, and one of the Fedra soldiers detained Tess, and she screams she is not a Firefly. And we get introduced to Ellie for the first time while she is being held by the Fireflies, and a Firefly woman tells her to count slowly from 1 to 10, and she goes close to 9 and 10, but she says F you at the end. Also, a funny part is Ellie lies about her name by saying her name is Veronica, which is kind of hilarious. Then we also get to see Joel go talk to this guy about needing to contact Tommy since he hasn't heard from him in about 3 weeks. We then see Joel trying to look at a map, trying to map out where he needs to go to get to Tommy. And then something really crazy happens. Joel is going full-on Max Payne by popping pills and drinking alcohol at the same time, and then he passes out. Then when Joel wakes up, this is the exact moment right after the 20-year time skip from the game, and Joel notices Tess got beat up and cleans her face just like in the game, which is spot on just like in the game, 100%. Joel and Tess go out and then eventually end up at one of the Firefly outposts and run into Marlene, and Ellie tries attacking Joel. But then after, Marlene tells Joel and Tess they have to smuggle Ellie. But one thing I gotta say, Marlene is phenomenal in her portrayal in the TV version and is 100% spot on just like in the game, because the same actress is playing her from the game, which is Merle Dandridge. Speaking of Marlene, we actually got to see the moment where Marlene first meets Ellie, which wasn't in the game, so this was just really well done. We also got to see Marlene talk about their battle with the Fedra military, and this is something I want to see more of in the TV series since we don't really get to see that much of their battles in the game. But anyways, just before Joel, Tess, and Ellie leave the Boston QZ, Joel says he needs to kill time by going to sleep just like in the game. And after when Joel wakes up, they head out and leave the Boston QZ and they run into the Fedra soldier, the same Fedra soldier that Joel did the drug deal with. The Fedra soldier tells them to get on their knees and they test them for infection, and Ellie stabs the Fedra soldier and Joel steps in front of Ellie, protecting her. Joel then has this flashback to the day his daughter Sarah dies, and after forced him to beat the Fedra soldier badly. Tess notices that Ellie has tested positive with the infection, and Ellie says, no, it's 3 weeks old, just like in the game, and it sounds exactly like the game's Ellie so much. But then after they leave and the episode ends off on a cliffhanger, showing the building in the distance that is leaning on the other, and we hear a clicker in the distance. This episode for me is a 10 out of 10, had a massive great start to a brand new TV series, and even took me back to the original The Walking Dead series premiere in 2010 with a start to a great TV series. That's literally the vibes that The Last of Us TV series premiere is giving me. It's not every day a TV series brings me that kind of nostalgia to a new awesome post-apocalyptic TV series. I can even say the 2003 part just really gave me Fear the Walking Dead Season 1 vibes, especially with the neighbors getting infected, since that's something Fear the Walking Dead also did too when the Clark's family neighbor turned. But anyways, this was a long review. It took me a while to make this since I had to rewatch The Last of Us series premiere a good 3 times to make sure I was talking about most of the stuff in this episode. Next week, I'll do the same thing. I'm gonna review every episode of Season 1. I can't promise to have all the reviews out early, the exact night or day after the episode, since I'm also a gamer working on tons of other videos as well. But that's all for this HBO's The Last of Us review. If you're a fan of The Last of Us or the post-apocalyptic genre in general, consider subscribing to the channel and ding that bell icon really hard so I can always stay within fast reach of your fingertips when new uploads arrive. ZombfectedGaming 349 over and out. Hello!